Hey everyone, it's Cassie. Thank you so much for joining me again today. We're going to do something a little bit different actually. I am going to be doing a fluid art tutorial, but I'm also going to be walking you through kind of my whole prep process, my paint mixing process, and then a very simple Dutch pour that I'm gonna do on this little 8x10 canvas, just to kind of test out some colors that I really usually do not work with and feel a little nervous about. So better to work small, right? So first thing we're gonna do here today is we're gonna prep this little 8x10 canvas, pretty basic little piece here. I start with frog tape for the back. Really prefer this to the blue painter's tape because the blue painter's tape has a tendency to leak through a lot more than this green tape does. So we're just gonna get started here. So I don't go all the way to the edge. I think some people do. That's not my preference. So I just put one end on, I go about where I think it needs to be and just cut it. And then really press those edges down. Some people might use like a little, I don't seem to have one over here, but like just a little scraper thing. All right, so I've got this piece on here. Let's turn it. And cut this one over here. And one more side. This is pretty wide tape. You don't really need it to be this wide. It's just what I happen to have on hand today. Okay. So now I've got all four sides taped off. You see I've got a little bit of a overlapping or like a lip here. That's just how I do it. You do what works for you. All right, so let's talk about pins for the back. So I do have some of these really big ones, but honestly, I prefer these guys instead. And so if you can see, the actual metal pin on this one is much narrower than on this one. Yes, this would hold it off the table a lot more. See the difference in that? But this one I find a lot harder to actually get into the back of the canvas, and I just don't prefer them. I've used them a few times, but it's not my favorite. I prefer these guys. This one, they're called giant push pins. I've got a link to them in my bio. I've also linked the frog tape, as well as some of the other products that I'm using here today. So take a look at that. I am gonna be giving you my mixing recipe as well, but I've also got it down in the description. So take a look at that. All right. So what I do is when I put these in, I just go kind of in the corner where that seam is and push them down. Make sure you get them all in all the way. That way it's going to be level on the table, assuming your table is level. They go in a little bit easier when it's in the crease of the canvas, or the wood part. Okay, so there we have it. I have pretty small hands, so it's wide enough, it's enough space for me to get under the edge of the canvas when I'm wiping the sides. So there we go, that one is prepped. Could be a little tighter, but I'm not gonna worry about it, it's tight enough. If you do need to tighten the back of your canvas, or if you do need to tighten your canvas if it's got too much wiggle to it, I take a paintbrush and before I would have taped it, I would have painted water on the back. Not too much, don't soak it, but do paint water evenly on the back. Some people use a spray bottle and they spray water on the back. I find I like it better when I paint it on because I can kind of shove the paintbrush in underneath the wood part, and it tightens up super fast. Okay, so now my canvas is prepped. Let's get that out of the way. Set it off to the side for a minute. All right, so let's start with the colors I've decided to use today. We'll see how these work together. I'm going with a Liquitex Basics Neutral Gray. And I'm going for green tones today. So I have Amsterdam Olive Green Deep, Liquitex Basics Light Olive Green. I'm gonna add some iridescent in there with this PBO Iridescent Green Yellow. And then also this PBO Iridescent Precious Gold for an extra pop in there. So that's what we've got going on. The gray is what I'm gonna use as the base. The other thing I'm using today is silicone mixing cups. I've got a larger size for the base color. I'm not going to use too much, but I usually do mix more paint than what I'm actually going to use for this little painting, for this small canvas. And the reason I usually mix extra is, one, I like to make sure I have plenty of paint for whatever canvas project I'm doing. Yes, there are calculators online. Yes, you can go and put in the size of your canvas and figure out exactly how much paint you need. But if I don't like the results and I end up wanting to scrape or pour over the top, I don't want to have to go back and remix more paint. The other thing I like to do is I tend to like to do multiple pieces in a row, and I tend to use just kind of the same colors that I've already mixed. Maybe I'll throw another color in there, mix it up later. So that's kind of why I mix more paint than I need. I'm also going to mix a little extra white so that I've got some white kind of for in between my colors, or just to add a little extra pop. This white I already have pre-mixed with the paint and the Floetrol, so I won't need to add Floetrol to this. I will need another cup for that though. So now that we've gone over what paints I'm using and the mixing cups, I usually I use these reusable mixing sticks. These are also linked down below in the description, so take a look at those. Pretty easy to clean off. And then my pouring medium of choice is this Floetrol, and this is US Floetrol. I'm over in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, and I can find this at my hardware store for a little under $15 a gallon, typically when I can find it. It's not always guaranteed, so whenever I'm in the hardware store, I will peruse that aisle, and if there are any gallons there, I usually buy out whatever they have. It does come in quart sizes as well. I don't usually buy the quart sizes because it's just not as cost effective. Every once in a while you can find this on Amazon for the same price as in a hardware store. Not always, but if you can't find it in a hardware store, then it might be worth paying a little bit extra to get it on Amazon. I have done that before when I've been pretty close to out. I like to keep a good stockpile of this though, so that I don't run out and I can paint anytime anytime the mood strikes. So the other thing that I also have with the Floetrol is this is something you want to strain. So you see I have this strainer cap on top here. I got this on Amazon as well. It's like a 3D printed strainer cap. I just bought a 3D printer, so I might make some extras of these if I can find the template. But this keeps the big chunks of anything that might be going on in there out of your paint, so that so it's just smoother and you have less likelihood of getting any gunk in there. So that's that. I like to keep the lid on it when I'm not actively using it. That way it doesn't dry out. All right, so we're gonna start with putting the paint into the cups. So my mixture recipe is pretty typically about 1 part paint to about 2 parts Floetrol. I don't measure, I don't weigh it, I just kind of eyeball it. So that's what you're gonna get from me today. I figured that I could measure it out, I could weigh it, I could be super scientific about it, but frankly, that's just not what I do on the day-to-day basis. And so I want to show you honestly and truly how I go about this. So I'm going to take this cup and I'm just going to squeeze in whatever amount I want to mix up. I'm not going to need a massive amount, but like I said, I'm mixing up more than I'm going to need. So that's that one. Let's see what I have as far as amount in here. So this is about 2 ounces of paint here, if you can see. So when I put my Floetrol in, I'm gonna probably put it up to about the 6, but I'm not going to add all of it in at one time because otherwise your paint's gonna be lumpy. You wanna add it a little bit of it at a time so that it's you can really mix it in well. So we're gonna go ahead and put our other paints in our other cups here, one at a time. I'll speed this part up for you. Okay, so as you can see, pretty similarly filled them up to a similar ratio to the larger cups here. This is 20 milliliters in here, so 20, 40, 60 is right here. So that's about how much Floetrol is going to go in, and then water to whatever consistency I need. Today is going to be a really fluid consistency. When I'm mixing directly in these smaller cups, and I tend to get pretty close to the top by the time I have the consistency right. So we'll see how it goes today. All right, so let's take the lid off this Floetrol again, and we'll pour some in. I'll start about there, and I usually do the first round of Floetrol in all the cups at the same time. Now I have played around with adding some other things in with my Floetrol for the pouring medium. I've experimented with some iridescent medium. I like that a good amount. I like anything that kind of sparkles and shimmers. In fact, here's the iridescent pouring medium that I will add sometimes. I'm not going to add any today. And then I've also added GAC 800 to some of them. You know, as I heard, that kind of helps with cracking and crazing. I don't find I really need it. The best thing I do to kind of avoid the cracking and crazing is I try to make sure that there's not too much paint left on my canvas when I'm finished, because inevitably if your paint is too thick in one area and if it dries too fast, you're going to get that cracking. So make sure when your painting is drying, there's no fan on in the area, that you're kind of protecting it from super dry air. I have a drying rack or a drying shelf. I stole it from the garage, and I've kind of got it covered in plastic all the way around with a couple of ventilation holes, just so that it does have a little bit of air movement, but not too much. So as you can see, I'm just stirring that Floetrol in, really just trying to make sure that we get a good mixture going on here. All right, so obviously it's super thick right now. So that's just the first bit of Floetrol. I'm gonna mix the first round in all of these here, so I'll speed this part up for you. All right, so got all of the first round Floetrol mixed in. We're gonna go ahead and pour in some more. And the more pouring medium you get mixed in with your paints, the thinner they're going to get and the easier it's going to be to kind of mix that in. Just be sure that you add it, again, a little at a time. All right, so as I'm mixing too, you might have noticed that one of the things I like about these squishy silicone cups is that I can squeeze, kind of push and wipe the sides of the stir sticks off and make sure that I'm getting any of those lumps out off the sides of the stir sticks, and really scrape the bottoms and the sides. Try to mix it in as well as you possibly can. All right, so let's see where we're at with this. We started at 2 ounces. I usually just push it like this. Now we're up to just under 4 ounces, so this needs some more Floetrol. Let's go ahead and just finish mixing up this with the Floetrol first. See, it's mixing much easier. Okay, we're a little under 6 ounces in here. I'm kind of okay with that. I think I'll leave it. But you can see it's already thinned quite a good bit, but there's a lot of mounding going on in there. I don't know if you're able to see that. Okay. Sometimes I go as much as maybe 2.5 parts of Floetrol, but I think anywhere around 2 is fine and good. The lower quality your paints, the less pouring medium you want to mix in, the less water you want to mix in with it, because the lower quality paints have less pigment in them, and you just want to make sure that you're not overextending that. One of the biggest reasons I use pouring medium is because I'm really trying to extend how many paintings I can get out of a single tube of paint. So that's kind of what the idea is behind what I've got going on here. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and finish adding Floetrol into the rest of these paints, and then we will go for the water. All right, so that's all the Floetrol I'm gonna need for all of these paints here. You can see I poured a little bit of white paint in here. I'll get another stick here. I don't know if you're able to see, it's pretty much the same consistency as the other paints. It's mixed about the same amount, the same ratio, paint to Floetrol. I obviously am not gonna use as much white paint, and so I just added a little bit in here. This I mixed up actually a few weeks ago at this point. I mixed up a number of colors that I have not used nearly enough of, but it's gonna stay good in here for quite a while, especially because I've not added any water into this. So that's where we're at with that. And that is titanium white, by the way. I choose titanium white, typically speaking, because it gives really good cell reactions. I choose specifically Amsterdam titanium white for my cell reactions. And then I also like to have the iridescent and metallic colors in there additionally for some really nice cell reactions. So hopefully you'll see that as we do our Dutch pour in a little bit. As far as water goes, I use one of these little squeeze bottles here, and I just fill it up from my refrigerator. So this is filtered water in here. Some people prefer to use distilled water. I just personally would not use tap water because I don't think that it's gonna hold up as well over time. Especially here where I live, we have some pretty hard water, so I like some really nice filtered water. All right, so let's start adding water to the base color. So more paint, we'll start there. Hopefully you guys can see this. So I'm gonna just add not too much at one time, especially at the very beginning, because otherwise, again, you're gonna get lumps. Really trying to avoid the lumps. Yes, I know that I'm gonna have a lot of air bubbles in this paint, especially because I'm mixing it and then we're gonna do a painting right away with it. So definitely be sure you have your torch handy. This is the one I use, it's a Benzomatic. I just went to my local hardware store, picked up the only little handheld torch that they offered there, and it works fine. All right, so I'm just gonna kind of keep testing the consistency as we go, but I know I'm gonna need a lot more water than what I've put in there so far. Don't forget to scrape down your edges. Don't forget to scrape off the side of your stir stick regularly. Make sure that you're really getting a nice, good mix all around. And since we're doing a Dutch pour today, I know that that is one of the more difficult techniques, but it is also one of my favorite techniques. If you've seen my other videos on my channel, I definitely have done quite a few Dutch pours. In fact, I will link it up here for you if you want to take a look at some of my other Dutch pours. I have never done a tutorial that is quite this in-depth though, so this is really where you want to start if you're looking for how I mix my paints and how I kind of go from start to end on a piece. All right, so you can see we're getting less mounding, but there's still a lot of mounding going on. And for a Dutch pour, we really want quite the fluid consistency. You may also notice that each time I add water, I'm feeling a little more bold. I add a little bit more than the last time. I'm gonna start going back down though to adding less each time because as I get closer to the consistency I want to make sure that I don't add more water than what I really need, because again, I don't want to over dilute my pigment. I also don't want to break the acrylic binders in here because then I'm gonna get some cracking and such as well, and my coverage won't be as good and it's just not gonna look good as a dried painting. So, all right, so let's get a little closer so you can see where I'm at now. That's still way too much mounding going on and way too much trace going on. So we're gonna keep going. I imagine that we're gonna get somewhere around here once we're done. And I know, you know, sometimes people are really careful with how much water they add. I have not found it to really be a problem. I just add water until I get the consistency I know I need for the type of painting that I'm doing. Okay, still too much trace. I'm gonna keep going. We're getting close to the top. Going. each time. As it gets thinner, when I add more paint, it needs a little less stirring each time. Okay, let's give you a closer look again. We're still leaving a little bit of trace. We still have a little bit of mounding going on. What I'm going for, the consistency I'm going for, is I want it to run directly back into the cup without any mounding or any trace. So let's keep going a little bit. Okay, so one of the problems with flexible cups is you have to be really careful picking it up as it gets fuller, because you could squeeze it and have too much going on here. Okay, so a lot closer to where we need to be. What I tend to do is I watch the drips and then I see how quickly they go down. So this is pretty close. This is pretty darn close. I think I need a little bit more water. You see how I did just a little squirt there though? I don't want to overdo it, so I'm being really careful. And we'll do a drip test here after we get our paints mixed, and we'll see what they look like. Okay, so I'm gonna call this one good for the moment. I'm gonna set that aside, and then I'm gonna run through the rest of them. I'm gonna do this one on, I don't know, fast speed, double speed or something like that. That way you don't have to sit here while I mix all of these colors. I know it's a lot. Okay, so sometimes I don't know why I do that to myself. I mix in these little tiny cups, and then I obviously need to add more water because I've started with maybe more paint than I should have in these little cups, and that's okay. You might have noticed that I went ahead and just poured off my greens, a little extra off into another cup so that I could make enough room for as much water as I needed. It is more important to get the paint consistency right than it is to worry about how much water you're putting in. So I'm just gonna go ahead and stir this up. I think I'm gonna go ahead and add water to this. It'll just be yet another shade to my greens. This one's got a little bit of iridescent in it as well, which is kind of fun. So let's see where we're starting with this consistency. Okay, definitely needs a little bit of water in here. Not a lot because there's not a lot of paint in this cup overall, and it already has a good amount of water in it. So there we go. I think that's good. Easy peasy. So this is a 200 milliliter bottle. We've used just about 1.5 bottles of water in all of these paints. So just to kind of give you an idea of about how much water we've used in total. So about 300 milliliters or so total. All right, let me grab a piece of paper so we can do a drip test. 1 second. Okay. I do not do a drip test every time. Some people do. When I was newer, I did a drip test more frequently. So hopefully these are pretty good consistency and pretty even consistency, but this will give us an opportunity to make some adjustments if we need. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put a similar amount of paint for each color. These are pretty thin, which is what we want. Few colors going on here today, guys. I have a tendency to do that. I like to mix lots and lots of colors. Sometimes it's too much, maybe. Okay. All right. Well, that might need a tiny bit more gray. I think I got more paint towards the end. Okay, here we go. Let's see what happens. Oh, not bad, not bad. I think my iridescent yellow-green needs just the tiniest bit more water, but this is pretty much what you want to see, for a Dutch pour. Again, you want it to be really, really fluid consistency. I'm going to add a tiny bit more water into my iridescent green. It's already pretty full. There we go, that should do it. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is take all of these sticks out. Let me go grab my paint bucket here. So I don't know if you can see inside of this. What I did is I got one of these big, I don't know how many gallons this is, 3 gallons or something. I got one of these at the hardware store because I like to wash my paint things out in here. There's a little bit of paint water in here already. I like to wash them out in here so that way the paint doesn't dry. I know some people like the paint to dry and then they go through and they peel it off. Sometimes that's fine, but I don't think it works super well when you're mixing Floetrol with your paints, it tends to be a little bit more brittle and a little less rubbery, so it's harder to get off in one piece. So I wash them right away. I do not dump this water anywhere. What I do is I actually have an interesting, I found Golden makes this paint crash kit. It's really cool actually. So 1 ounce treats 1 gallon of water. And I'm gonna do another video, maybe actually after this one, but I'll post it separately, showing you how this works. It's super, super cool, but allows you to separate the water from the paint solids so that you can dump that water down the drain and the paint solids can go in the garbage. So that's what I do. I don't wanna clog up my pipes, and I also don't want to wreck up the environment. So that's how I go about that. So let's go ahead and wipe all of the stir sticks off and put them in my paint water so that I can get that cleaned up later. Okay, next step is to, there's a lot of bubbles on the surface. See that? They're rising up in there pretty quickly. I like to try to get as many bubbles out as I can before I even get going. It's perfectly safe and fine to torch the tops of these. So there we go. This is not by any means going to get all the bubbles out, but I always do that first. You maybe have seen me do that in other videos. That's what I'm doing. So this is the little travel dryer I use. Check the description again. I have put a link to this dryer. It is black now, so it's a little bit different. The pink is not an option, which is unfortunate for all of you guys. I love the pink. It's one of my favorite colors. What I like about this dryer is it's got, oops, it's not plugged in. So what I love about it is it's got a high and a low. I don't use the high. I always use low because my paints are very fluid. And if I use high, it could just kind of get crazy. So I don't do that. I use low, and then it has this cool button right here. I always hold the cool button as I'm blowing the paint because I don't want it to get too hot. I don't want it to start drying the top layer of paint before I even finish the painting. So that's one reason why I really, really love this dryer, for that reason. It might be easier if I could just flip a button and have it always be on cool, but it is not a big deal for me to just hold that cool button in as I blow. So that's what I do. I usually tend to keep some paper towels next to me as well because I try to minimize the paint, but obviously, you know, this is a messy, just a messy process. So, all right. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna torch the tops of these one more time actually, because more bubbles have come up even just since I did that the first time. So we're going to start with the gray paint here and put down our base layer. I'm going to blow. I'm actually just going to blow it and see. You can see I need just a little more paint on here. But again, I don't want to put too much paint on my canvas before I've even started my painting, because it's a little easier to add paint than it is to take it away. All right, let's finish evening this out. And I'm going to make sure I get the edges and the corners. That's my cat Annabelle. She probably sees a squirrel. Okay. So you can possibly see that I probably should have painted a base layer, of the gray on here because it is not as opaque as I'd like it to be. It's not covering as well as I'd like, but that's okay. I can come in later and repaint those edges. No big deal, if I need to. I'm going to run a torch over this to pop whatever bubbles I have going on in there right now. Okay, so I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to start from this corner and do a little bit of a squiggle line up to that corner with all of the colors, and then we'll blow that out. Just be sure that you don't put too much paint on your canvas if you can help it. And I'm just gonna work down in a color progression here. Here is that interesting mix of greens with a little iridescence to it. It's actually a beautiful color. Here's my lighter olive green. Here is the other iridescent color. Probably should have started with white. Didn't think about that. That's okay. I'm gonna put some gold in here. Not too much. Here we go. And I'm gonna put a little white on top, I think. Okay, now with the Dutch pour, typically what you wanna do is add a little bit of your base layer, your base color, around the outside. Don't go crazy with this. As you can see, I tend to start my pour just off the canvas. Just that way I hopefully don't pour too much right at the beginning. You don't need a lot here. There we go. I'm going to torch this again. Okay. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to use my dryer and I'm going to push the paint kind of over both edges here before I blow it out. So here we go. Okay, so now we have kind of a thinner line, and I'm going to start from this corner and I'm going to blow it out in kind of a crisscross motion. Okay, so you can probably see all of these awesome cell reactions that we've got going on in here. Those iridescent colors are amazing for that, honestly. I do want, my cat is trying to get into a cupboard somewhere. She's in the bathroom, give me a second. Sorry about that. So I am gonna tweak some of the edges here, but I'm going to not use the blow dryer anymore, and I'm just gonna kind of blow with my mouth a little bit here. So let's see how this goes. All right, I do think I have a little too much of the gray paint in a couple of areas. So here's another fun trick that we're gonna do. I'll show you. I'm going to kind of suck up some of the excess paint in these little areas because I do worry that they would crack some. I don't want all the paint up, but I do want some of it. Again, this is something that's easier to fix now than fix the cracks later. Trust me on that. I've definitely spent a lot of time painting cracks in paintings. So I'm going to use this gray to go over these edges a little bit more. There we go. That gray was way thinner than I expected it to be. Here we go. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna see if I need to kind of fix up any errant paint that I don't love the look of. Okay, and I think the other thing I'm gonna do is add a couple little swipes in here to kind of connect the flow a little bit. I'm going to use the end of this paintbrush. I'm going to dip it in my gold, and I'm going to kind of come through. Actually, I'll come from the top down, I think. Here we go. Add a little bit more in here. Just to connect the flow. Do remember, this is your work, so you do what you really feel your piece needs. Don't be afraid to step back and really take a look at it. Maybe even step away for a moment and come back with some fresh eyes. Also, don't tweak it too much at one time, because you can always come back in later and make more adjustments when it's dry. You can paint a little bit here and there. Okay, I actually like these colors together. I think it works really nice. I'm gonna add a little more gray on some of the edges in the hopes that it will dry a little bit nicer. I'll definitely have to come back in and paint these corners later. That's okay. I should have painted the edges before I started. So lesson for you guys, that's really good to do. You'll see a lot of other artists will do that. I tend to be a little impatient, if I'm quite honest with you. I like to get right to the painting. So sometimes I have a little more fixing later to do than I maybe would have liked. That's okay. All right, so I'm actually pretty happy with this. I like these colors. Like I said, green is not my usual go-to, a little bit scary for me sometimes, but I'm pretty happy with these results. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it one more torch just to get whatever air bubbles I can. Be careful not to stay in the same spot for too long. You will burn your paint. All right, guys, well, this has been a lot of fun, actually. I've really enjoyed sharing this with you, and sharing my process with you and kind of my prep process and my mixing process. I really hope that you've enjoyed it as well. If you have any questions about anything that you've seen me do here or my paint mixture or anything, put them in the comments below. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have, and try to help you troubleshoot a little bit as well. You know, if you're having difficulty, I'm more than happy to help. This is something I really love doing, and I love helping others do what they love and helping others be creative as well. So give me a second here. I'm going to wipe the edges underneath, and then we will bring you in for a close-up so that you can see this up close and personal like me. All right, guys, here is the finished piece. I really like these greens. I am glad that I went with this. You've probably seen a lot of pink and purple on my channel lately because those tend to be my favorite colors. But I'm glad that I kind of stepped outside the box a little bit. So let's kind of get in close so you can see some of the detail here. A lot of really nice cells detail going on, and that is a result of the titanium white and the iridescent colors in that metallic as well. So if you have trouble, oh, and it also is the Floetrol. The Floetrol is great at producing cells. So if you're having trouble getting cells, try this, try my mixture, add iridescent colors, add metallic colors, and see how that goes for you. Really cool. Very much enjoy this piece. All right, guys, let me know what you think. Don't forget to check the description down below. Leave me a comment. Thank you so much for joining me again, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.